I am Elaine, 32, living in my small but cherished apartment in Boston. After years of fighting for independence from my controlling family, I had finally created a peaceful life for myself. Then came that dreaded weekly family dinner when my parents dropped their bombshell. Without asking, without considering my feelings or situation, they simply announced it as fact: my sister Isabelle was moving in with me. Their exact words still echo in my head. Your sister is moving in. Do not make a fuss. If you are watching this video, drop a comment letting me know where you are from, and hit that like and subscribe button if you have ever had family members make decisions for you without asking. Growing up in the Sullivan household meant living under a microscope. My parents, Margaret and Thomas, believed that control equaled love. Every decision from the clothes I wore to the friends I made required their approval. Report cards with anything less than straight, as meant weeks of restrictions. Dating was practically forbidden until college, and even then any boy brave enough to meet my father usually never returned for a second visit. Meanwhile, my sister Isabelle floated through life on a cloud of parental adoration. 3 years younger than me, she mastered the art of manipulation early, failed a test, must be the teacher's fault, broke curfew. She was just being social and making connections. The rules that chained me never seemed to apply to her. Isabelle is more sensitive, my mother would explain when I questioned the double standard. You have always been the strong one, Elaine. You can handle more responsibility. By 18, I was desperate for escape. While my parents expected me to attend the local community college and live at home, I secretly applied to universities across the country. The acceptance letter from Boston University arrived like a lifeline, but my parents refused to contribute a penny toward my education if I moved away. So I worked 3 jobs simultaneously through freshman year: waitressing mornings at a diner before classes, administrative work at the university library between lectures, and bartending on weekends. Sleep became a luxury, but freedom was worth every exhausted moment. Meanwhile, Isabelle attended an expensive private college just 30 minutes from our parents' home. They paid for everything: tuition, housing, even a new car. When she dropped out after 2 years to find herself, they supported her decision completely. When I expressed concern about my student loans during a rare call home, my father simply said, "You made your choice, Elaine." After graduation, I found an entry-level position at a marketing firm in Boston. The pay was barely enough to cover rent and loan payments, but it was mine. I limited contact with my family to obligatory holiday visits and those dreaded weekly Sunday dinners whenever I visited home. My apartment became my sanctuary. Located in a pre-war building in Allston, it was small but had character-high ceilings, hardwood floors, with charming creaks and large windows that filled the space with morning light. For 6 years I lived alone, slowly filling it with second-hand furniture, lovingly restored, and art collected from local street fairs. 3 months ago, everything changed when I received a substantial promotion at work: campaign manager with a 40% salary increase. For the first time, I could breathe financially. I could even start thinking about buying property instead of renting. What my family did not know, what I had carefully kept from them, was that my living situation had changed 6 months earlier. My 2-bedroom apartment, while perfect for me, had become increasingly expensive as Boston rent prices soared. Rather than moving to a cheaper neighborhood or a smaller place, I had made a practical decision, one that I knew my traditional controlling parents would never understand or approve of. Throughout my life, my parents made decisions for me without consultation. When I was 16, they sold my car that I had purchased with my own babysitting money because they decided I did not need it. When I was 22, they canceled my health insurance without telling me because they assumed my part-time job provided benefits. When I was 25, they told extended family I would host Thanksgiving without asking if I could afford to feed 15 people. Their pattern was clear. My life was simply an extension of theirs, to be directed as they saw fit. Little did I know this pattern was about to repeat itself in the most intrusive way possible. The Sunday evening dinner that changed everything started like any other. I arrived at my parents' colonial-style house in Lexington at exactly 5:30 p.m., knowing that 5:29 would be rushing us and 5:31 would be keeping everyone waiting. The familiar knot of tension formed in my stomach as I rang the doorbell rather than using my old key, a small act of boundary setting that annoyed my mother every single time. "You are always so formal, Elaine," she said as she opened the door, leaning in for the obligatory cheek kiss. "This is still your home." "I have my own home now, Mom," I replied with the practiced smile that hid my frustration. This was our standard greeting script, performed weekly, like clockwork. Inside, the house smelled of pot roast and lemon polish. My father sat in his recliner, watching golf, acknowledging my arrival with a brief nod. My sister was nowhere to be seen. "Is Isabelle coming?" I asked, helping my mother carry dishes to the dining room table. "She will be here shortly," my mother answered, her tone unusually tight. "She has had a difficult week." That was when I first sensed something was off. My parents exchanged glances that silent communication developed over 35 years of marriage. My father muted the television, a rare action before dinner was actually served. "We should wait for your sister before we discuss it," he said cryptically. By the time Isabelle finally arrived 20 minutes late, and without apology, the tension in the room was palpable. She looked disheveled, her usually perfect appearance noticeably diminished. Her eyes were puffy from crying, and she barely greeted me before taking her seat at the table. Dinner began with awkward small talk. My mother asked about my job, but barely listened to my response about my recent successful campaign. My father inquired about Boston weather, as though it were a foreign country. Isabelle picked at her food silently. Finally, after serving dessert, my father cleared his throat, the universal signal that an announcement was coming. "Elaine, your sister needs a place to stay for a while," he stated flatly. "We have decided she will move in with you next Saturday." I nearly choked on my apple pie. "Excuse me." Jason broke up with her. My mother jumped in, patting Isabelle's hand. "After 3 years, can you believe the nerve? And now she cannot afford the rent on their apartment alone." "I lost my job too," Isabelle added, tears welling in her eyes. "The company downsized, and I was last hired, first fired. It is all falling apart." "That is terrible, Isabelle," I said sincerely. "But my apartment is very small and Your sister is moving in. Do not make a fuss," my father interrupted his tone, leaving no room for discussion. "She needs family right now." "You have that 2-bedroom place," my mother added. "And we know you are doing well at work now. It is time you helped your sister like we have always helped you." I felt my chest tighten with familiar anxiety. "When you say helped me, do you mean when you refused to support my education? Or when you told me I was foolish for moving to Boston?" "Now is not the time for your attitude," Elaine, my father warned. "This is already decided. We will bring her things on Saturday morning." "Do not you think you should have asked me first?" I managed to say, my voice smaller than I wanted it to be. My mother looked genuinely confused. "Why would we need to ask? She is your sister." The conversation spiraled from there. Every objection I raised was dismissed. When I mentioned space concerns, they suggested I give Isabelle the master bedroom, since she needs more closet space for her clothes. When I brought up my work schedule and need for quiet, my mother suggested I could be more considerate of family needs. When I mentioned the financial arrangement, they assured me Isabelle would contribute when she gets back on her feet. I left dinner that night feeling like I had been hit by a truck. On the drive back to my hotel, I called my best friend Amanda. "They are just dropping her on me, Amanda," I said, hands shaking on the steering wheel. "No discussion, no asking, just your sister is moving in on Saturday." "Can you just say no?" Amanda asked. "You do not understand what they are like," I replied. "Saying no is not an option in my family. It never has been." "What about Shannon?" Amanda asked, lowering her voice, as though my parents might somehow hear her through the phone. Have you told them about your roommate situation? I felt my stomach drop. Shannon. How was I going to explain Shannon to my family? I tried to tell them I already have a living arrangement, but they talked over me, I admitted. They do not know about Shannon. They think I live alone. Well, Amanda said after a pause, maybe it is time they found out. When I got back to the hotel room, I texted Shannon. We need to talk when I get home tomorrow. Family crisis brewing. The response came quickly. Whatever it is, we will figure it out together. Safe drive home. Those simple words of support nearly brought me to tears. In just 6 months, Shannon had become more family to me than my actual family had been in years. And now, I might be forced to choose between them. Monday morning, I called my mother while commuting to work, hoping that with some distance from the dinner table, rational conversation might be possible. Mom, we need to discuss this situation with Isabelle, I began carefully. There is nothing to discuss, Elaine, she replied. Your sister is in crisis. This is what family does. But you cannot just decide she is moving into my apartment without consulting me first. I have my own life, my own situation. What situation? My mother's voice sharpened. You live alone in a 2-bedroom apartment. You have plenty of space. That is not the point, Mom. The point is you and Dad making decisions about my life without asking me. We are not asking you to donate a kidney, Elaine. Just share your space with your sister who has nowhere else to go, unless you want her living on the street. And there it was, the guilt trip perfectly executed. I felt myself backing down the lifetime habit of acquiescing to avoid conflict rising like muscle memory. By Tuesday, the text messages started. First from Isabelle. Can I bring my television? Yours is so small. Then, from my father, Isabelle needs to know if there is covered parking for her car. From my mother. Does your building allow pets? Isabelle might want to get a cat for emotional support after everything she has been through. Each message assumed compliance. Each message pushed a boundary further. Each message increased my anxiety. On Wednesday, Aunt Patricia called. Your mother tells me you are being difficult about helping Isabelle. I raised you better than that, Elaine. On Thursday, my cousin Rachel sent a long message about how family should always come first and how she had lived with her brother for 2 years after her divorce. It was the best thing that ever happened to me, she wrote. You two will bond so much. By Friday, I was barely functioning at work. My presentation to clients was disjointed. My emails were full of typos, and my boss Andrea pulled me aside to ask if everything was okay. Family stuff, I explained vaguely. Nothing I cannot handle. But the truth was, I was not handling it. Every time my phone vibrated, I jumped. Every time I thought about Saturday morning, my stomach churned. That evening, I finally broke down and told Shannon everything over dinner at our shared kitchen table. They just announced it like they were telling me the weather forecast. I explained, pushing pasta around my plate without eating. Isabelle is moving in on Saturday. Period. End of discussion. Shannon listened quietly, blue eyes, concerned but calm. At 35, Shannon had the steady presence of someone who had seen worse problems than family drama. And you have not told them about me, Shannon stated rather than asked. I tried, but they talked over me. And now I do not know how to explain that I have been living with someone for 6 months without telling them. Just tell them the truth, Shannon suggested, refilling my wine glass. After leaving the military, I needed an affordable place to live while using my GI Bill for college. You needed help with rent. We met through Amanda's roommate matching service, hit it off, and decided to share this place. What is so complicated about that? You do not understand my parents, I sighed. They are traditional, judgmental, and controlling. They believe a woman should only live with family or a husband. Do they know you are 32 years old and can make your own decisions? Shannon asked with a slight smile. In their minds, I am perpetually 16 and incapable of good judgment. So what is the plan? Are you going to let them move Isabelle in here? Where would she even sleep? I looked around our cozy apartment. We had already maximized the space efficiently. The second bedroom functioned as Shannon's room, while the living room had a clearly defined section that served as my home office. The kitchen was small, but organized to accommodate both our cooking styles. Where would Isabelle fit? And more importantly, how would my privileged, pampered sister react to finding out I shared my apartment with a roommate? I have been thinking about it all week, I admitted. And maybe it is time I finally stood up to them. Not just about this, but about everything. Their constant control, their dismissal of my choices, their favoritism. That sounds healthy, Shannon said supportively. But, fair warning, I am not moving out so your sister can move in. We have a lease agreement, and I have rights. I would never ask you to leave, I assured her. You have been more supportive in 6 months than my family has been in years. Just then my phone rang. It was my father. We will be at your apartment at 9 a.m. Sharp tomorrow, he said without preamble. We have rented a small moving truck for Isabelle's things. Make sure your parking area has space. Dad, we need to talk about this. There are complications you do not understand. The only complication I see is your attitude, Elaine. Your sister needs you, and you are being selfish. We will see you at 9. He hung up before I could respond. Shannon, who had heard the entire one-sided conversation, reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Whatever happens tomorrow, I have your back. For the first time that week, I felt a glimmer of courage. Maybe it was time my family met the real me, not the compliant daughter they thought they knew. To understand the bomb that was about to detonate in my family, you need to understand who Shannon really is and what our relationship had become over the past 6 months. Shannon Lewis and I met through a roommate matching service run by my friend Amanda. At 35, Shannon had recently completed 8 years of military service and had moved to Boston to attend college on the GI Bill. Tall, athletic, with short blonde hair, and the disciplined bearing of someone accustomed to structure, Shannon initially seemed like my complete opposite. Our first meeting was at a coffee shop near my apartment. I was nervous about sharing my space with a stranger, but my finances left me little choice. Boston rent had increased 20% in the previous year alone, and my salary had not kept pace. I am clean, quiet, and rarely home, Shannon told me during that first meeting. Between classes and my part-time job at the VA hospital, I mainly need a place to sleep and study. I work long hours too, I replied, and I travel occasionally for business. We discussed basics, rent split, utility payments, grocery arrangements, quiet hours. Everything was straightforward and practical, no red flags. What I did not anticipate was how quickly Shannon would become not just a roommate but a friend. It started with simple things, Shannon fixing my leaky shower head when the landlord was slow to respond, me bringing home leftover catering from work events, shared complaints about Boston parking enforcement. 2 months in, we established a Sunday night tradition of homemade pizza and documentary watching. 3 months in, we were comparing notes on dating disasters and family dramas. By month 4, Shannon was helping me prepare for my big presentation that led to my promotion, and I was proofreading Shannon's psychology papers. My family would never understand this arrangement. I admitted one evening after we had both had a glass too many of wine. They think unmarried adults should either live alone or with family. My parents are the same, Shannon confessed. Very traditional. They still struggle with my life choices. That was the night I learned more about Shannon's own family complications. Born and raised in rural Pennsylvania, Shannon had grown up in a strictly religious household, with rigid gender expectations. Joining the military had been both escape and rebellion. They did not speak to me for 2 years after I enlisted, Shannon told me, said I was betraying my upbringing. Now we have a fragile truce, but I keep most of my life private from them. I found myself opening up about my own family's controlling nature, the double standards between me and Isabelle, the constant criticism disguised as concern. It is like they have this script for who I should be, I explained, and they cannot handle any deviation from it. Shannon nodded in understanding. Family scripts are powerful things. Breaking free from them takes courage. Over time, our apartment developed its own comfortable rhythm. Shannon was up at 5 a.m. for a run, while I rarely emerged before 7. I cooked elaborate dinners when work stress mounted. Shannon preferred simple protein-heavy meals on a strict schedule. The living room had organically divided into my reading nook by the window and Shannon's workout area near the hallway. The bathroom counter held my extensive skincare collection on one side, and Shannon's minimalist 3 products on the other. We were different in countless ways, yet the arrangement worked beautifully. We respected each other's space, supported each other's goals, and genuinely enjoyed each other's company. I had never lived with anyone so considerate and straightforward. For reasons I still do not fully understand, I had kept Shannon's existence a secret from my family. Perhaps it was knowing their judgment would taint something positive in my life. Perhaps it was enjoying having one area of my life completely separate from their influence. Whatever the reason, in 6 months of weekly family dinners and phone calls, I had never mentioned my roommate. And now that omission was about to collide spectacularly with my family's expectations. "Should I make myself scarce tomorrow?" Shannon asked as we cleared our dinner dishes. "I could find somewhere to be until this blows over." I considered the offer briefly. It would certainly be easier to explain things to my family without Shannon present. I could control the narrative, soften the revelation, maybe even convince them that this was a recent temporary arrangement. But then, I realized that approach would just reinforce the pattern. Me accommodating them, me managing their emotions, me contorting my reality to fit their expectations. "No," I said finally. "I am done hiding parts of my life to make them comfortable. If they are going to show up and try to move Isabelle in without my consent, they can deal with the reality of my living situation." Shannon looked surprised but pleased. "Are you sure? It could get messy." "It is already messy," I replied. "But for once, it is not going to be messy on their terms. It is going to be messy on mine." That night I barely slept. I kept imagining different versions of the coming confrontation, each ending worse than the last. My father's anger, my mother's tears, Isabelle's dramatic victimhood. But beneath the anxiety was something new, a quiet, steady resolve. For perhaps the first time in my adult life, I was choosing my own path forward, regardless of their reaction. Whatever happened tomorrow, it would be the end of one chapter in my relationship with my family, and the beginning of another. I just hoped it would not be the final chapter altogether. Saturday morning arrived with cruel brightness sunlight, streaming through blinds I had forgotten to close during my restless night. The digital clock read 7:15 a.m., giving me less than 2 hours before my family's scheduled invasion. I showered and dressed with unusual care, choosing dark jeans and a blue blouse that always boosted my confidence. War paint, Amanda would have called it. Armor for battle. In the kitchen, Shannon was already making coffee dressed in jeans and a simple gray t-shirt. Our eyes met, and Shannon gave me a reassuring nod. "Whatever happens today, remember that you have every right to set boundaries," Shannon said, handing me a steaming mug. "Your apartment, your rules." "Our apartment," I corrected. "Our rules." We spent the next hour in quiet preparation, not for Isabelle's arrival but for the confrontation to come. Shannon straightened the living room while I stress-cleaned the already spotless bathroom. At 8:30, we both sat at the kitchen table, checking our phones and pretending to be calmer than we felt. "They are actually bringing a truck?" Shannon asked, breaking the silence. "A small one, according to my father," I replied. "Knowing Isabelle, it will not be nearly enough. She has more clothes than a department store." "And they still have no idea I exist." "None. I tried telling them I had complications with my living situation, but they talked over me. Classic Sullivan family communication." At 8:45, my phone buzzed with a text from Isabelle. "Can you clear out a bathroom drawer for my makeup? And do you have full-length mirrors? I need at least 2. I showed the message to Shannon, who raised an eyebrow. "She sounds delightful." "She has never lived with consequences," I explained. "This breakup and job loss is probably the first real adversity she has ever faced. At 8:55, another text arrived, this time from my mother. "We are 5 minutes away. Please be ready to help carry boxes." At precisely 9 a.m., I saw them through the living room window, my father's silver SUV, followed by a small rental truck. They parked in the visitor spaces, and I watched, as all three emerged, my father looking determined, my mother anxious, and Isabelle scrolling through her phone oblivious to the tension. "They are here," I said unnecessarily to Shannon, my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. "Do you want me to answer the door, or would you prefer to?" Shannon asked. I considered for a moment. My initial instinct was to face them first, to try to explain before they saw Shannon. But then I remembered all the times they had steamrolled over my explanations, dismissed my words before I could even finish speaking them. "You answer it," I decided. "Let them see from the first moment that their assumptions are wrong." Shannon nodded and moved toward the door. As the first knock came 3 sharp raps that could only be my father's impatient hand. I stood back just out of sight of the entrance, but where I could still see their faces when the door opened. Shannon took a deep breath, then turned the knob. The door swung open to reveal my family, my father, at the front, with a cardboard box in his arms, my mother and Isabelle flanking him. Their expressions transformed in synchronized shock as they took in the stranger before them. "Can I help you?" my father asked, his brow furrowing in confusion. "You must be Thomas Sullivan," Shannon said pleasantly, extending a hand. "I have heard a lot about you. I am Shannon Lewis, Elaine's roommate." The box in my father's arms tilted dangerously as his grip slackened. "Roommate." My mother's voice rose an octave. "There must be some mistake. This is my daughter's apartment." "It is our apartment, actually," Shannon corrected gently. "We have been sharing it for 6 months now." Isabelle finally looked up from her phone, her eyes widening as she processed the scene. "What is going on? Who are you?" I stepped forward, then moving to stand beside Shannon in the doorway. "This is my roommate, Shannon, and this is why I tried to tell you that Isabelle cannot move in here. There is no room." My father's face had turned an alarming shade of red. "Elaine Catherine Sullivan, what is the meaning of this? You never said anything about a roommate." "I tried to tell you at dinner, Dad, but you and Mom kept talking over me. You never asked if Isabelle could move in with me. You told me she was moving in. You never considered that I might have my own life arrangements." "Well, this person will have to go then," my mother said, as if Shannon were a piece of furniture that could simply be discarded. "Family comes first, Elaine." Shannon, to her credit, remained perfectly calm. "I have a 12-month lease agreement with Elaine Mrs. Sullivan. I am not going anywhere." "We need to discuss this privately," my father said, his jaw tight. "Inside, Elaine. Now." "Anything you need to say can be said in front of Shannon," I replied, surprised by the steadiness in my voice. "I am not discussing family matters in a hallway in front of a stranger," my father insisted, attempting to step forward into the apartment. Shannon did not move from the doorway. "I think it might be best if everyone takes a moment to process this new information. Perhaps you could come back later, after discussing as a family." My father's face darkened further. "Do not tell me when I can see my daughter, young lady. Elaine, tell your friend to step aside." "Shannon is right, Dad," I said. "This is not a good time. You all need to process the fact that there is no room for Isabelle here." "There are 2 bedrooms," my mother interjected. "Surely your roommate can find other accommodations temporarily while your sister is in need." "That is not happening, Mom," I stated firmly. "Shannon lives here. This is Shannon's home too." Isabelle, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, suddenly pushed forward. "I cannot believe you are choosing a stranger over your own sister, Elaine, after everything our family has done for you." That broke something in me, the sheer audacity of her statement. "Everything our family has done for me," I repeated incredulously. "Like refusing to help with my education. Like criticizing every choice I have made. like barging into my life and trying to take over my space without even asking. Maybe we should continue this conversation in the parking lot, Shannon suggested quietly, noting that doors to neighboring apartments were beginning to open. Curious residents peeking out at the commotion. We are not going anywhere until we sort this out, my father declared. Elaine, we need to speak to you alone. Now. He attempted again to enter the apartment, and this time, Shannon physically blocked the doorway, not aggressively, but firmly. Mr. Sullivan, I respect that you are Elaine's father, but this is my home too, and you do not have permission to enter it right now. The standoff lasted only seconds but felt like hours. My father, unused to being denied anything, especially by someone he considered beneath his authority, looked as though he might explode. Instead, he turned to me, his voice dangerously quiet. Outside. Now. I nodded, stepped out into the hallway, and closed the apartment door behind me, leaving Shannon inside. The four of us stood in the narrow corridor, the air thick with tension. How could you lie to us like this? My mother demanded, as soon as the apartment door closed, living with a complete stranger, and never telling us. I did not lie, I responded. I just did not volunteer information that I knew you would disapprove of regardless of the circumstances. Do not play word games, Elaine, my father snapped. A lie of omission is still a lie. And now your deception has left your sister without options. Isabelle has plenty of options, I countered. She could move back home with you. She could find her own apartment. She could stay with friends. The only option she does not have is moving in with me. We already gave up her old room for your father's home office, my mother explained, as if this were somehow my problem to solve. And she needs to be in the city for job interviews. That sounds like a series of choices you all made, without consulting me, and now you expect me to deal with the consequences. Why do you always have to be so difficult? Isabelle interjected, tears welling in her eyes. I lost everything, Elaine. My boyfriend, my job, my apartment. The least you could do is help me out. And I would have been happy to help if anyone had asked me, instead of telling me. I could have helped you look for an affordable apartment, or loaned you money for a security deposit, or connected you with people at my company who might be hiring. But instead, you all just decided to impose on my life, without consideration. My father's face darkened. This is not about your pride, Elaine. This is about family responsibility, something you clearly know nothing about, living with some stranger, instead of helping your own sister. Shannon is not some stranger. Shannon is my friend and roommate who respects my boundaries, which is more than I can say for my own family. Just then, the door to apartment 4B opened, and Barbara, my retired neighbor, who had lived in the building for 20 years, stepped out. Is everything all right out here, Elaine? She asked, her eyes taking in the tense family tableau. Everything is fine, Barbara, thank you, I assured her. Just a family discussion. Quite a loud family discussion, she noted. I could hear raised voices from inside my apartment. My father, ever conscious of appearances, immediately modulated his tone. We apologize for the disturbance, ma'am. This is a private family matter. Barbara, a former high school principal, unimpressed by authority figures, simply raised an eyebrow. Elaine and Shannon are good neighbors. Quiet, respectful, always willing to help. I hope this family matter is not causing them any distress. Her implication was clear. She was watching out for us, and my family was now under observation. The power dynamic shifted subtly, but significantly. We are just surprised to learn about Elaine's living situation, my mother explained stiffly. Oh, Shannon has been here for months, Barbara replied innocently. Such a lovely person. They both are. This building is lucky to have them. With that, she retreated back into her apartment, leaving the door slightly ajar. A clear message that she was still listening, still standing guard. My father lowered his voice, but his anger remained. This is outrageous, Elaine. We come here to help your sister, and we find you living with some random person you never even told us about. That random person has been more supportive of me in 6 months than you have been in years, I replied, my own voice quiet but intense. And you want to know why I never told you about Shannon? Because I knew exactly how you would react. With judgment, with disapproval, with attempts to control my life just like you are doing right now. We have only ever wanted what is best for you, my mother insisted. No, you have only ever wanted me to do what you think is best. There is a difference. And you think living with a stranger is what is best, my father challenged. Shannon is not a stranger to me, and yes, sharing an apartment with someone who respects my independence is far better than being manipulated and controlled by my family. My father's expression hardened. You know, Elaine, we have been helping you more than you realize. Who do you think has been making payments on your student loans for the past 3 years? The revelation hit me like a physical blow. What are you talking about? When you were struggling after graduation, we set up automatic payments to help you out, $500 a month toward your loans. We never told you, because we knew your pride would make you reject our help. I felt dizzy with shock and betrayal. You have been secretly paying my loans, without telling me. We were helping you, my mother insisted, like family should. No, you were maintaining control, I countered clarity, cutting through my confusion. You were keeping me financially tied to you without my knowledge or consent. That is not help, that is manipulation. Fine, my father said coldly. If that is how you see our support, we will stop the payments immediately. You can handle it all on your own since independence is so important to you. Yes, I agreed, surprising myself with my certainty. I can handle it. I have a good job now. I can take over the payments completely. And what about your sister? My mother demanded. Will you abandon her too? Isabelle stood slightly apart, her expression, a mixture of confusion and gathering outrage, as she realized her plans were collapsing. I am not abandoning anyone, I explained, but I am setting boundaries. Isabelle cannot live with me. That is final. But I am happy to help her find her own place, or to loan her some money if she needs it. This is not how family treats each other, my father declared. Your sister needs you, and you are turning your back on her for some roommate. No, Dad. This is not how family should treat each other. Family should not make demands without asking. Family should not ignore boundaries. Family should not manipulate and control. What you are doing right now is not family support. It is family tyranny. The hallway fell silent. My words hung in the air between us, too true to be easily dismissed, too painful to be readily accepted. My father finally broke the silence. It seems you have made your choice, Elaine. I hope you will reconsider what family really means. I know exactly what family means, I replied steadily. Family should mean love without conditions, support without control, respect for boundaries. When you are ready to be that kind of family, I will be here. My mother's eyes filled with tears. How can you speak to us this way after everything we have done for you? I am speaking to you this way because of everything you have done to me. There is a difference. Isabelle, never one to remain in the background for long, stepped forward. So, that is it. I am just supposed to be homeless because you prefer your roommate to your own sister. You are not homeless, Isabelle. You have options. They just are not the option you wanted, which was to take over my life without asking. You are going to regret this, she said, her voice hardening from victim to threat in an instant. When you need family someday, do not come crying to any of us. If family means what it does today, I would rather rely on friends who respect me, I answered honestly. My father put his arm around my mother's shoulders and his hand on Isabelle's back, physically aligning them against me. We should go. Your sister has made her position clear. As they turned to leave, I felt a strange mixture of grief and liberation. I was losing something, yes, but I was also gaining something far more valuable. My own voice, my own boundaries, my own life, on my own terms. I love you all, I called after them. When you are ready to respect my boundaries, we can talk again. None of them turned around. They walked away down the hall, a united front of disappointment and judgment, leaving me standing alone outside my apartment door. But I was not really alone. As their footsteps faded down the stairwell, Shannon opened our apartment door, and Barbara emerged fully from hers, both offering silent support as the weight of what had just happened settled around me. For the first time in my life, I had stood firm against my family's manipulation. The cost had been high, but as I looked at the supportive faces around me, I knew it had been worth it. The silence in my apartment after my family left was both deafening and liberating. Shannon made tea while I sat at our kitchen table, trembling with adrenaline and emotion. "You did it," Shannon said, simply placing a steaming mug in front of me. "You stood your ground." I wrapped my hands around the warm ceramic, anchoring myself in the moment. I cannot believe I actually did that. I have never spoken to them that way before. "You were amazing," Shannon assured me, clear, firm, and still respectful despite their behavior. The next few hours passed in a blur. Barbara from across the hall brought over freshly baked cookies, listened to the full story, and shared her own tales of breaking free from controlling family dynamics decades earlier. Other neighbors stopped by, curious about the morning's commotion, offering sympathy and support when they heard the condensed version of events. By evening, my phone was flooded with messages from extended family, each taking sides in a conflict they had only heard one version of. Aunt Patricia declared I had broken my mother's heart. Uncle Robert suggested I was being selfish. Cousin Rachel urged family reconciliation at any cost. "Block them," Shannon advised, as I scrolled through the barrage of guilt and judgment. "Just temporarily. Give yourself space to process without their voices in your head." I followed that advice, silencing my phone for the first time in my adult life, without fear of parental repercussions. The freedom was dizzying. The following weeks brought waves of emotion relief, followed by guilt, confidence, followed by doubt, peace, followed by grief. I threw myself into work, finding solace in the structured challenges of marketing campaigns and client presentations. Shannon provided steady support, never pushing for conversation, but always available when I needed to process my thoughts aloud. 1 month after the confrontation, I received an unexpected call from my mother's sister, Aunt Diana, who had always been the family rebel. "I heard what happened," she said, without preamble. "And I want you to know I am proud of you, Elaine." "You are?" I asked, surprised. Diana had always kept her distance from family drama. "Your parents did the same thing to me when I was younger," she revealed. "Tried to control every aspect of my life. That is why I moved to California 30 years ago and limited contact. It was the only way I could become my own person." Her words were a balm to my wounded spirit. "How do you deal with the guilt?" I asked her. "By remembering that the guilt is a tool they installed to control you," she answered wisely. "Every time you feel it, recognize it for what it is, their voice, not yours." That conversation marked a turning point in my healing process. I began to see my family dynamics with clearer eyes, recognizing patterns that had shaped my entire life. With Shannon's encouragement, I started seeing a therapist who specialized in family trauma, unpacking decades of subtle manipulation and control. 3 months after the confrontation, to my great surprise, Isabelle texted me. "Can we talk? Just us." We met at a neutral coffee shop downtown. She looked different, somehow smaller, without our parents' presence amplifying her. "I found an apartment," she said, after awkward initial greetings. "A studio in Somerville. It is tiny, and nothing special, but it is mine." "That is great, Isabelle," I said sincerely. "I am proud of you." She traced the rim of her coffee cup, avoiding my eyes. "I also got a job. Not in my field, just retail for now, but it pays the bills." "That is a good start," I encouraged. "How are Mom and Dad taking it?" "They wanted me to keep living with them, and looking for something worthy of my potential," she said, making air quotes. But for once I did not listen. I nearly dropped my cup in shock. Isabelle defying our parents. This was unprecedented. "What changed?" I asked carefully. She was quiet for a long moment. "Watching you stand up to them, I guess. I always thought you were the difficult one, the the troublemaker. But that day at your apartment, I saw something different. I saw them trying to control you just like they have always controlled me. The difference was you said no. It was perhaps the most honest conversation we had ever had. Isabelle admitted she had resented me for years, for escaping our parents' orbit while simultaneously looking down on me for not having their financial support. I acknowledged my own resentment of her favored status and the double standards that had shaped our relationship. I am not saying we are going to be best friends overnight, she concluded as our meeting ended. We have too much history for that. But maybe we can start over as adults without Mom and Dad defining our relationship. I would like that I told her, meaning it. Rebuilding my relationship with my parents proved more challenging. For the first 4 months after our confrontation, contact was limited to terse text messages and obligatory holiday calls. But slowly, as both Isabelle and I maintained our boundaries, something shifted in their approach. 6 months after that fateful Saturday morning, my parents asked to meet for dinner. To my surprise, they suggested coming to Boston and asked if I would recommend a restaurant, a small but significant acknowledgement of my territory. The dinner was strained but civil. My father never one for emotional discussions focused on safe topics, the weather, sports, neighborhood developments. My mother, however, had clearly been doing some reflection. Your apartment looked nice from what little we saw of it, she offered tentatively. And your friend Shannon seemed capable. From my mother, this qualified as effusive praise. Shannon is great, I confirmed. A good roommate and a good friend. Perhaps we could meet properly sometime, my mother suggested. If you are comfortable with that. It was a small olive branch, but I recognized the effort it represented. I would like that, I replied. By the end of dinner, we had established new tentative parameters for our relationship. They would call before visiting. They would ask, not tell, when they wanted something from me. I would make more effort to share appropriate details of my life with them. None of us apologized explicitly for the past, but we all acknowledged a desire for a healthier future. 1 year after the confrontation, Shannon and I renewed our lease for another 12 months. My promotion had led to another, making me marketing director with a salary that could easily cover my student loans and a comfortable lifestyle. Shannon had graduated with honors and found a position at a veterans support center, using personal experience to help others transition to civilian life. Our apartment had become a true home, filled with friendship, respect, and the kind of support that came without strings attached. We hosted dinner parties for friends, game nights with neighbors, and even eventually a cautious visit from my parents that ended without argument or ultimatum. The most valuable lesson from this entire experience was learning the difference between family obligation and family love. Obligation demands compliance, regardless of personal cost. Love respects boundaries, honors individuality, and supports without controlling. I had lost the comfortable illusion of a perfect family, but I had gained something far more precious: authentic relationships based on mutual respect rather than manipulation and control. With Shannon, with my sister, with my healing relationship with my parents, I was building connections that nourished rather than depleted me. Standing up for yourself is rarely easy, especially against those who have known you longest. But as I discovered, it is often the most necessary act of self-love you can perform. By refusing to be defined by others' expectations, I had finally found my own voice, my own boundaries, and my own place in the world. If you have ever had to stand up to family pressure or set difficult boundaries with loved ones, I would love to hear your story in the comments. Remember to like this video if it resonated with you. Subscribe for more real-life stories of standing up for yourself, and share with anyone who might need encouragement to set their own boundaries. Thank you for listening to my journey. And remember, real family supports your growth, not just their expectations.